She was found on a Tuesday, face down in the creek bed behind the old Miller property, just past the church grounds where the choir used to practice late into the summer evenings. The sun hadn't yet burned off the morning fog, and for a few minutes, no one was sure if the thing floating in the shallow water was a person or just a heap of laundry dumped from a truck. It was a jogger who called it in. She saw the pale skin, the tangled mess of blonde hair, and a flash of red, a choir robe, sticking to the girl's shoulder like blood. The 911 call came in at 6:42 a.m. I think it's a girl. She's not moving. She's face down. Jesus Christ, I think it's Hannah Lewis. She was 18. She'd just graduated high school in June. She sang in the church choir every Sunday. She had braces removed last spring and had been proudly showing her smile in every selfie since. By the time Detective Aaron Delgado arrived on scene, word had already traveled fast. The tape hadn't even gone up before half the town had started circling like vultures. Sheriff's deputies were pushing back onlookers, teenagers filming with their phones, mothers clutching their children, and elders from Grace Chapel Baptist Church standing with open mouths and damp eyes. One of them whispered, "That's the Whitmore's girl." They were wrong, of course. Hannah wasn't a Whitmore, but she was close enough. She'd grown up in the church, sang in the choir, volunteered at Bible camp. She was bright, a little shy, always had her nose in a journal. People said she had the voice of an angel, pure and trembling, like something fragile just barely held together by hope. And for the last 9 months, she had been seeing someone. Someone much older. Someone very, very married. Pastor Daniel Whitmore. He was the man everyone trusted. The man who baptized their children, buried their grandparents, and smiled with perfect teeth every Sunday morning behind the pulpit as he spoke of grace, temptation, and forgiveness. Now, his name would appear in a murder investigation. At the creek, Hannah's body lay in 2 feet of water. Her arms were oddly positioned. Not floating, not weighed down, just limp. Her hair, normally in perfect curls on Sundays, was matted with mud and twigs. Her eyes were open, vacant, staring at nothing. She wore her choir robe. It was inside out. Beneath that robe, hidden from the first responders until the medical examiner arrived, was a stomach swollen with life. She was 5 months pregnant. The autopsy would later reveal she had been strangled. No signs of forced entry, no sexual assault, no defensive wounds. Just quiet hands around her throat and the breath slowly slipping out of her lungs. She died somewhere else. Not in the creek. She was placed there. Posed. Her robe buttoned sloppily. The red trim stained darker from the water. It was staged. Almost reverent. Almost like a funeral. Within 24 hours, rumors exploded. Facebook threads turned into war zones. Parents pulled their children from church groups. Donations to Grace Chapel dried up overnight. Half the congregation swore Daniel Whitmore couldn't possibly have anything to do with it. The other half wasn't so sure. And behind the doors of a once thriving church, the air turned electric with fear. A diary was found in Hannah's room. Tucked inside the lining of a pillow, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it, were 3 words scratched in frantic ink across the final page. He promised forever. Let's rewind. Let's go back to before Hannah Lewis was found in that creek, before the town turned against itself, and before a pastor's sins bled into murder. Because to understand how everything fell apart, you have to understand how it all began. Hannah Lewis woke up early every Sunday. It didn't matter if she'd been out late with friends or studying for exams. If the sun was up, so was she. Hair in rollers, coffee brewing, practicing harmonies under her breath while she laid out her choir robe over the back of the bathroom door. Grace Chapel Baptist Church sat at the edge of Maple Ridge, a town with more cows than traffic lights, and one high school that graduated all of 26 students in 2024. For most kids, life here was predictable, cyclical, and quiet. For Hannah, it was safe, familiar. She lived with her mom, Jolene, a waitress at the 24-hour diner off Route 12, in a single-wide trailer with faded blue siding and a tire swing that hadn't moved in years. Her dad had split when she was 6. Never sent a card, never called. That left Hannah and Jolene to figure it out together. Most days, they did just fine. People described Hannah as sweet, kind, not just in that vague way adults use to compliment teenagers, but genuinely. She was the kind of girl who remembered your dog's name, brought extra cookies for the shy kid at youth group, and stayed behind after services to stack chairs even if no one asked. Her room was filled with books, stacks of thrifted journals, and dozens of folded origami cranes pinned to her wall like a paper constellation. She dreamed of studying literature, teaching one day, maybe going to Nashville for music school, though she rarely said that part out loud. She had this softness to her, said Maya Carter, her best friend since 5th grade. But she was stronger than people thought. Quiet doesn't mean weak, you know? Maya was louder, bolder, the kind of girl who dyed her hair purple sophomore year and didn't care what the PTA moms thought. The two of them were inseparable. Hannah with her songbooks and Maya with her sketch pads, giggling through sermons when they were 12 and passing notes in the back pew. They had crushes, secret codes, plans to run away to Atlanta after graduating, and get an apartment with terrible plumbing and a cat named Hemingway. But things started changing in the fall of senior year. That's when Pastor Daniel Whitmore began leading the youth study group himself. At first, it was exciting. Pastor Whitmore wasn't like the older elders who quoted scripture like math problems. He was charismatic, polished, wore fitted suits, had a voice like velvet, and spoke about God like he was your best friend, not some judgmental figure watching you from the clouds. Hannah was enthralled. She started staying after study group, helping tidy the chairs, asking him questions about the Bible, about philosophy, about music. He'd tell her stories from seminary, praise her for her curiosity, recommend books she'd never heard of. It was subtle at first. Little comments about how mature she was for her age, how thoughtful, how rare it was to find someone so spiritually in tune. He called her brilliant, said she had an old soul. Sometimes Maya would catch them talking alone and get a strange feeling in her gut. I didn't like it, she said later. Something about the way he looked at her. It was too long, too interested. But Hannah was glowing. She started wearing lip gloss, straightening her hair, practicing her choir solos more than usual. When Maya brought it up once, teased her gently, Hannah blushed and denied it. Don't be gross, she said. He's a pastor. He's married. He was married. Claire Whitmore was tall, elegant, and always a step behind her husband, smiling dutifully, hosting the women's ministry with surgical grace. She'd been with Daniel since college. Their daughter had died at birth 15 years ago. They never had another. Around the congregation, Claire was seen as the backbone, quiet, loyal, refined. But to Hannah, she seemed cold, untouchable. Like she was in on a secret the rest of the world didn't know. By January, things got stranger. Hannah started lying, telling Jolene she was staying late at Maya's when she wasn't, sneaking out on weeknights, turning off her phone for hours at a time. One night, Maya found her sitting in the back pew alone, crying. She wouldn't say why. Then came the confession. They were parked in Maya's car behind the old roller rink, engine off, snow tapping gently against the windshield. I think I'm in love with him, Hannah whispered. Maya blinked. With who? Pastor Whitmore. There was a long pause. No, you're not, Maya said, trying to laugh it off. You're just confused. He told me he loves me too. The air went still. He said he's never felt this way about anyone, Hannah continued, her voice small. That Claire doesn't understand him. That God brought me into his life for a reason. Maya stared at her, heart pounding. Hannah, he's 42. He's your pastor. That's not love. That's manipulation. But Hannah shook her head, eyes fierce now. You don't get it. You don't see him the way I do. He's not like other men. He listens to me. He sees me. They didn't speak for 3 days after that. Meanwhile, in church, rumors started circling. A few mothers mentioned how close Pastor Whitmore had gotten with one of the choir girls. An elder noticed how often Hannah stayed late. Claire was seen leaving service early one Sunday, face pale, lips tight. But no one said anything directly. Not yet. Then came the pregnancy. Hannah found out in March. She was 5 weeks along. She'd missed a period but assumed it was stress. When the test turned positive, she locked herself in her room for 2 days. Didn't answer texts. Barely ate. When she finally called Daniel, he didn't answer. The second time, he picked up and said nothing for nearly a minute. Then, in a low voice, he said, "We'll fix it." "Fix it?" she asked, heart thudding. "It's not the right time," he said. "I can't risk losing everything." "But you said," "I said I love you. I do. But this complicates things." She felt sick. He offered her money, a ride to a clinic 2 towns over, a motel room where no one would recognize them. She hung up. That night, she wrote in her journal, "He promised forever. Now he won't even look me in the eye." Maya found out the truth a week later. Hannah showed up at her house crying, makeup smeared, hands shaking. She told her everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the way Daniel had changed. Maya begged her to tell someone. The police, her mother, a counselor, anyone. But Hannah was terrified, not just of Daniel, of the church, of what people would say, of what it meant to be the girl who tempted a pastor. She couldn't bear the shame, so she stayed quiet. She stopped going to choir practice, avoided Sunday services, spent more time alone, walking by the creek behind the church, the same place where she would later be found. She told Maya she was keeping the baby. "No matter what he says," she whispered, "this child didn't do anything wrong." It was the last time they ever spoke. 3 weeks later, she went missing. She was supposed to meet Maya at the coffee shop near the high school. Never showed. Didn't answer texts. Jolene called Maya that night, panicked. Said Hannah hadn't come home. Her bed was made, her robe missing, her phone left behind. 24 hours later, her body was found. Face down in the creek. Pregnant, strangled, and wearing her choir robe inside out. The morning of March 29th started with fog. The kind that crept in slow and thick, turning Maple Ridge into a watercolor town. Trees vanished into mist. The hills behind Grace Chapel blurred into soft shapes. You could hardly see your own breath in front of you. It was 6:37 a.m. when a jogger named Carla Monroe spotted something by the edge of Book Hollow Creek. At first, she thought it was a bag of laundry. It wasn't uncommon for the Miller kids to dump their garbage along the back trails when they didn't want to pay extra for pickup. But something felt off. The shape was too still, too human. Carla moved closer. She saw bare legs, long, pale, a foot tangled in the reeds, hair soaked and matted, her breath caught in her throat. She called 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but Carla couldn't stop shaking. "She's not moving," she said, pacing in circles. "She's wearing red. It's a robe or something. I think it's Hannah Lewis." Emergency responders arrived within 12 minutes. a single sheriff's car, followed by paramedics and then a forensic unit. The body lay face down in shallow water, arms bent unnaturally under her chest. Her skin was mottled and gray. Her mouth was slightly open, eyes wide. There were no signs of struggle nearby, no drag marks, no shoe prints, just silence. The crime scene team sectioned off the area with tape and began photographing the body from all angles. When they gently turned her over, they found something that made them all pause. Hannah was wearing her choir robe, the deep red one with gold trim that the youth choir wore during special services. But it was inside out, buttoned sloppily, as if by shaking hands. Beneath it, she wore a simple white dress. Her hands were crossed over her abdomen. At first glance, it almost looked peaceful. Almost. The medical examiner noted that her abdomen was swollen, visibly. That alone changed everything. 5 months pregnant, 18 years old, murdered. Detective Aaron Delgado was called in by 7:30. He arrived wearing jeans, a dark windbreaker, and the kind of tired expression that said he'd seen too many scenes like this. But this one hit differently. Delgado had seen Hannah perform once, a Christmas service. She'd sung "Oh, Holy Night" so sweetly he swore the old stained glass windows had vibrated. To see her now, waterlogged and lifeless, felt like sacrilege. He crouched beside the creek, studying the angles. No bruises on her wrists, no defensive wounds, no blood, no sign of sexual assault, but her neck. The marks were faint, but unmistakable. She'd been strangled. Delgado looked around. There was no sign she'd died here. No mud on her knees, no sign of panic. It was quiet staging, almost reverent, like someone had laid her there on purpose, which meant one thing: she'd been killed somewhere else. The killer had chosen this location, behind the church, near the place Hannah had spent so many hours rehearsing and singing. A place that meant something to her, or to him. Delgado knew he'd need to speak to the church. Grace Chapel was already stirring. By 9 a.m., word had spread like wildfire. Someone posted on Facebook. A parent mentioned it at the grocery store. Soon, the entire town was buzzing. Hannah Lewis, the quiet girl from choir, found dead in the creek, pregnant. The implications were like gasoline on a lit match. At 9:42 a.m., Delgado and his partner, Officer Nina Chen, arrived at Grace Chapel. They didn't go in through the front entrance. They slipped in through the side, while the choir room was still empty. Delgado needed to see it for himself. The robe closet was half open. A few hangers were empty. Hannah's name was still taped to one. Lewis H. in neat handwriting. Her size, her initials, everything matched. Inside the robe closet, they found one disturbing clue. The hanger next to Hannah's, labeled Whitmore D, was missing its robe too. That was odd. Daniel Whitmore hadn't sung in the choir in years. His robe, a larger version in the same red and gold trim, was usually stored untouched behind the others. But now it was gone, and Hannah's had been found on her body, inside out, half-buttoned. Delgado stepped back and exhaled slowly. Back at the station, Jolene Lewis arrived just after 11. Her eyes were red, lips trembling. She clutched her daughter's notebook to her chest like a lifeline. "I knew something was wrong," she kept whispering. "I knew it." She handed Delgado the notebook, a soft leather journal, worn at the edges. Inside, page after page of delicate cursive. Poems, Bible verses, reflections. But in the back, several entries changed in tone. The ink got darker, angrier, more frantic. One entry read, "I thought he meant it. He said he would leave her. He said I was the answer to his prayers." Another, "I'm scared. If anyone finds out, He said it could ruin everything. And the last, he promised forever. The page was torn in the corner, as if it had been gripped too tightly. Delgado closed the book and rubbed his forehead. The path was beginning to form. They knew Hannah was pregnant. They now had a possible relationship, inappropriate at best, criminal at worst, with her married pastor. They had motive. They had fear. But they didn't yet have proof. Delgado requested Hannah's phone records and began combing through her social media. No posts for days. Her last text was to Maya Carter. "Meet me after school. It's time." Maya, when interviewed, looked broken. "She was going to tell the church," she whispered. "She said she couldn't keep hiding it." "Did she say who the father was?" Delgado asked. Maya hesitated, then nodded. "She said it was Pastor Whitmore." Later that evening, Delgado returned to Grace Chapel. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the pews. Pastor Daniel Whitmore was waiting in his office, a Bible open on his desk, his hands folded neatly. He stood when Delgado entered, offered a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "What can I help you with, Detective?" Delgado studied him carefully. "When's the last time you saw Hannah Lewis?" Whitmore's face didn't change. "Last Sunday. She missed practice this week. I assumed she was busy with school." "You didn't see her Monday night?" "No." Delgado raised an eyebrow. "She texted a friend saying she was going to speak to someone about a relationship, one she said had gone too far. She also mentioned being pregnant." Something flickered behind Whitmore's eyes, but it was gone in an instant. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "She also mentioned you." There was a long silence. "I counsel a lot of young people," he said finally. "That doesn't mean anything." Delgado's tone sharpened. "Did you ever have an inappropriate relationship with Hannah Lewis?" Whitmore didn't flinch. "Absolutely not." "Would your wife say the same?" Another pause. "I suggest you be careful with what you imply," Whitmore said, voice tightening. "You're speaking to a man of God." Delgado leaned in slightly. "And you're speaking to the man investigating the murder of a pregnant 18-year-old girl found in her choir robe behind your church with your name all over her journal." He left without another word. Outside, the night was still, but Delgado's instincts were roaring. Someone was lying. And whoever killed Hannah Lewis didn't just want her gone. They wanted her silenced. The town of Maple Ridge cracked like glass. News of Hannah Lewis's murder swept through the community with the force of a tornado, leaving nothing untouched. Every coffee shop, school hallway, gas station, and church pew became a breeding ground for rumors. And every whispered sentence carried weight. She was pregnant? With his baby? The pastor? Some refused to believe it. Others claimed they knew all along. Either way, the name Pastor Daniel Whitmore was no longer followed by reverence. It was followed by suspicion, by sideways glances, by muttered prayers no longer trusts. Ting. Grace Chapel shut down choir practice indefinitely. Sunday services were canceled, out of respect for the Lewis family. But no one was fooled. The real reason was simple. Nobody wanted to sit beneath the pulpit and wonder if the man delivering the sermon was also a killer. Outside the church, signs were pulled from the lawn. Bouquets of flowers appeared at the front steps, placed by grieving congregants. But by Wednesday, one of the bouquets had a note tied to it with yarn. "She trusted you." That same night, someone spray-painted the words, "Repent," across the side of the church building in black. Inside the Lewis home, Jolene sat in Hannah's room, holding her daughter's baby blanket like it could still carry her scent. The blinds were closed. The house was quiet except for the low hum of a fan. She hadn't spoken to reporters. She hadn't taken her apron off since her last shift at the diner. "I keep expecting to hear her singing," she said, voice hollow, when Detective Delgado came by again. "She always hummed in the morning, even as a baby." Delgado brought flowers. It felt like nothing. "What happens now?" she asked him, staring at the wall. "Do we find out who did it?" "We're trying," he said. "I promise you that." But the truth was, leads were scarce. The autopsy confirmed Hannah had been strangled by hand. No rope, no wire, just pressure. The bruising was consistent with someone much stronger than her, but not necessarily male. There was no DNA under her fingernails, no foreign fibers, no defensive wounds. She hadn't seen it coming, or she hadn't fought back. Toxicology showed no drugs or alcohol in her system. The fetus was approximately 21 weeks gestation, healthy, uninjured, until the moment Hannah died. The killer had left nothing behind but silence. Delgado and Officer Nina Chen combed through security footage from the area around Grace Chapel. There were no cameras at the church, too small, too traditional, but a nearby animal hospital had an exterior feed pointed at the corner of Church and Willow. At 10:43 p.m. on March 27th, a vehicle was caught turning into the alley behind Grace Chapel, a black 2015 Lincoln Navigator. It didn't stop long, maybe 2 minutes. Then it disappeared down the road toward the tree line. Delgado pulled up the vehicle registry. There were only 3 Lincoln Navigators in Maple Ridge. One belonged to the mayor's niece. One was used by a contractor who worked out of town that week. The third was registered to Claire Whitmore. The next morning, Delgado paid the Whitmores another visit. This time, Claire answered the door. She looked immaculate as always. Pearls, crisp blouse, hair pinned back. But her eyes were swollen, as if she hadn't slept in days. "Detective?" she said, voice soft. "Come in." Daniel wasn't home, she said. He had gone to visit a colleague in Pinehurst, 2 hours away. Said he needed spiritual clarity. Delgado didn't buy it for a second. He sat in the living room. Claire poured tea. Her hands trembled. "You know why I'm here," he said gently. Claire gave a short nod. "I've heard what people are saying," she said. "About Daniel. About Hannah." "They're not just saying things," Delgado replied. "We have her journal. We have witness accounts. We know there was a relationship." Claire looked away. Her throat bobbed. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered. "But I'm not stupid. I've seen the signs, the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the lies." "Did he ever admit it to you?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then, "No, but I didn't need him to." Delgado leaned forward. "Were you driving the Navigator Monday night?" She blinked. "What?" "We have footage of your vehicle behind Grace Chapel. After 10:30 p.m., less than 24 hours before Hannah's body was found." Her lips parted. "I wasn't driving it." "Then who was?" She hesitated. "I don't know." Delgado studied her. "You keep your keys in the house?" "In the kitchen drawer." "Was the car moved without your knowledge?" I don't know." Her voice was cracking. Fear was blooming behind her composure. Delgado knew she was hiding something. The question was, what? Had she found out? Had she confronted Hannah? Had she, in a moment of fury, done something terrible? He left the house with more questions than answers, but the community had already made up its mind. On Thursday night, the local high school held a vigil in Hannah's memory. Hundreds gathered on the football field, holding candles, reading poems, listening to soft hymns piped through speakers. Maya Carter spoke last. "She wasn't just a victim," she said. "She was a girl who believed in people, who believed in love, who wanted to make the world better. And someone used that against her." Her voice trembled. "They didn't just take her life. They took her chance to be a mother, to graduate college, to live." As the vigil ended, someone released a single paper lantern into the sky. It floated upward, glowing softly, until it disappeared into the dark. That image made the front page of the Maple Ridge Gazette the next morning. The headline read, "Flight of a Voice. Town mourns Hannah Lewis as pastor faces scrutiny. But not everyone was mourning. That same day, an anonymous tip came into the sheriff's office. A man's voice, muffled, shaking. "She told him she was going public," the caller said. "She said she was going to tell the elders. She had proof. He said he couldn't let her destroy his life." "Who are you talking about?" the operator asked. But the line had already gone dead. Delgado tried tracing the call. It came from a burner. The only real lead they had was dying in their hands. And just when it seemed like the case couldn't get any colder, it broke wide open. Detective Aaron Delgado stared at the board in the incident room. At the center, a photo of Hannah Lewis, smiling in her choir robe, eyes bright, lines and oats branched outward like a spiderweb. Photos, timelines, phone records, testimonies. But nothing stuck. The killer had been careful, calculated. No weapon, no witness, no confession. The usual mistakes, phone pings, digital messages, blood, hair, were missing. But Delgado didn't believe in perfect crimes. Someone always slips. And in the case of Hannah Lewis, the crack came not from high-tech forensics or dramatic confessions, but from something simpler, a thumb drive. On April 4th, a week after the body was discovered, Maya Carter returned to the station. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she held out a small silver flash drive. "I found it in Hannah's school locker," she whispered. "It was taped behind a calculus textbook. I think she wanted me to find it." Delgado plugged it in with caution. Inside were 3 files. The first was a Word document, a sort of just-in-case letter, dated 2 weeks before Hannah's death. "If anything happens to me," it read, "please know I didn't run away. I didn't hurt myself. Someone else did. Someone who said they loved me. His name is Pastor Daniel Whitmore." Delgado's breath caught. The second file was a screenshot, a photo of a text message conversation. Daniel's name was clearly visible at the top. The messages were damning. "Daniel, we have to be careful. People are asking questions. Daniel, I need you to be strong. I'll figure things out soon. Hannah, you said that last month. I can't keep hiding. I'm showing now. Daniel, don't make this harder than it needs to be." And then the third file, a voice memo. Delgado hit play. The recording was grainy. Hannah's voice was faint but clear. She sounded nervous. "This is just in case," she said. "I know it's dangerous, but I need to tell the truth. He promised he would leave her. He said the baby was a blessing. Now he won't return my calls. He's scared, and I think he's angry." There was a pause, then almost a whisper. "If I disappear, it was him." Delgado played it 3 times. Then he called in the DA. The next morning, a warrant was issued for the Whitmore residence and for Daniel's office at Grace Chapel. When police entered the house, Claire Whitmore stood silently in the kitchen, staring out the window. She didn't resist. Daniel wasn't there. A search of his study revealed multiple flash drives, all encrypted. But inside a hidden compartment at the bottom of a locked filing cabinet, they found something else. A notebook. Inside were handwritten entries. They weren't labeled, but the handwriting matched Daniel's. The entries were obsessive, repetitive. Some bordered on frantic. They began months earlier. "She sees me. She understands. Claire doesn't know how to love. Hannah does. I can't lose my family, but I can't live without her." Then the tone changed. "She's going to ruin everything. She wants to tell. She thinks I'll stand beside her. I can't. She's too naive. She doesn't see what this means." The final entry was short. "Forgive me." At the same time, Delgado's tech team pulled surveillance footage from the Pinehurst Turnpike. the road Daniel claimed to have taken to visit a colleague after Hannah's body was found. There was no sign of his vehicle, no toll booth records, no gas station sightings. Instead, GPS metadata from his car's onboard system, finally obtained through a subpoena, revealed the truth. At 10:44 p.m. on March 27th, his vehicle was parked for 22 minutes behind Grace Chapel, right where Hannah's body would be discovered hours later. He'd lied. A bolo was issued. Daniel Whitmore was now the prime suspect in the murder of Hannah Lewis. For 48 hours, he vanished. No calls, no sightings, not a trace. Then, on April 8th, a call came into dispatch. A woman at a motel off Interstate 17 reported a man matching Whitmore's description had checked in 2 days earlier, using the name David Winter. Delgado and a SWAT team arrived by 2:30 a.m., room 204. They breached the door. Daniel was inside, disheveled, shirtless, kneeling by the bed, Bible open, lips moving in prayer. When officers shouted commands, he didn't flinch. He looked up with red-rimmed eyes and whispered, "She was going to ruin everything." Delgado stepped forward, gun drawn. "Daniel Whitmore, you're under arrest for the murder of Hannah Lewis." He didn't resist. At the station, Daniel refused a lawyer. He requested one thing, a meeting with Claire. Delgado allowed it, behind glass. Claire entered slowly, her face unreadable. Daniel looked at her, pleading. "I never meant for this to happen," he said. "I loved her, but she wouldn't listen. She was going to destroy our lives." Claire said nothing. "You believe me, don't you?" Claire leaned closer to the glass, eyes locked on his. "No," she said softly. "I believe her." When he realized she wouldn't protect him, something in Daniel broke. He confessed. To the affair, to the baby, to the night Hannah called him, desperate and scared, to the argument behind the church, to the moment she said she'd expose him. "She said she wasn't scared of me," he whispered, "that I couldn't control her anymore, that she'd tell everyone." His hands clenched. "I just wanted her to stop." He described how he strangled her, how she didn't fight, how she looked at him confused, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. "I laid her down gently," he said. "She deserved peace." Delgado said nothing. There was no peace left in this story. Daniel Whitmore's confession should have been the end. He'd admitted to everything, the affair, the pregnancy, the murder. It was clean, cold, convincing. But Detective Aaron Delgado had been in the game too long to take any confession at face value. Something didn't sit right. Daniel spoke in absolutes. "I did it alone. It was only me. No one else knew." He repeated it like a prayer. But then, there was Claire. The night of the murder, her car had been seen near the scene. Her story had holes. Her eyes had gone too wide when he asked about the robe. She said she didn't know who took it. And now that Daniel had confessed, she was suddenly calm. Too calm. Delgado ordered a closer look at Claire Whitmore's phone records. Most of the data had been wiped recently. A fact suspicious in itself. But one backup survived. An encrypted iCloud folder. When tech support cracked it, they found something buried deep in a voice memo app. It was a recording, dated the night Hannah was killed. The timestamp, 10:18 p.m., March 27th. Delgado hit play. At first, it was quiet. Then, a voice. Daniel's. "Don't cry, baby. Please don't cry." A pause. "I said I'd fix this. We'll figure it out." Then Hannah's voice, sharp, trembling. "No, you said you loved me. You lied. Keep your voice down. I'm telling the elders. I'm done hiding. You can't. You don't understand. A rustling sound. Then, a third voice. Female. Cold. Precise. She understands perfectly. The next moment was chaos. Gasping, struggling, something heavy falling. And then, silence. That voice. It was Claire. Delgado's blood went cold. She had been there. Daniel was brought in again. This time, with his attorney. They played the recording. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, she found out. I didn't know she followed me. You said you were alone. I thought I was. Delgado leaned in. Did she help you kill her? Daniel shook his head. No. She did it. Silence. She told me to meet Hannah at the church. Said I should take care of it. I thought she meant talk her down, pay her off. I didn't know Claire was already waiting. What happened? Hannah got upset. She started yelling. I was trying to calm her. And then Claire stepped out of the shadows. She had the robe, Hannah's robe. She told her to put it on. Said she didn't deserve to be in our lives as she was. Said if she wanted to be a part of the church, she'd go out dressed like she was meant to. And then, Daniel's voice cracked. She wrapped the belt of the robe around her throat. He paused, choking back something. Regret, maybe. Shame. Hannah fought. I froze. I didn't stop her. Delgado's voice was low. You let your wife kill her. I didn't plan it that way, Daniel whispered. But once it started, I didn't know what to do. Claire was arrested that same night. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply buttoned her coat, kissed her husband's cheek, and walked into the back of the squad car. When Delgado asked her why, she finally spoke. She humiliated me, Claire said. She betrayed the church. She got pregnant. She would have destroyed everything. My marriage, Daniel's ministry, our place in this town. She looked out the window of the interrogation room. You think I'd let a girl like her ruin a man like him? Delgado's hands clenched under the table. She was a child, he said. Claire didn't flinch. She was a threat. The case exploded nationwide. The trial was fast-tracked due to the overwhelming evidence, the recordings, the confession, the digital footprint, the robe fibers, the forensic timeline. The prosecution charged Daniel Whitmore with second-degree murder and accessory to murder. Claire Whitmore was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. Their defense strategy fell apart when Maya Carter agreed to testify, and when Jolene Lewis submitted Hannah's diary entries as evidence of ongoing manipulation and grooming. In one entry, Hannah had written, "She looks at me like I'm poison, like I'm the stain on her dress, but it's him she should be angry at, not me." The final nail came from the robe itself. Forensic tests revealed that the red robe Hannah was found in had both Claire's and Daniel's fingerprints on the inside. Claire's were around the neckline. Daniel's were on the hem. They had both touched her, dressed her, staged her. It was a ritual of guilt disguised as control. But the true twist wasn't in the evidence. It came when Daniel, facing a plea deal that would avoid a life sentence, turned on Claire fully. She wanted her dead, he told the courtroom. She planned it. She rehearsed what we'd say. She even told me what to wear the next day, so I'd look mourning but composed. He paused. She said if I confessed, God would forgive me. Then he looked at the jury. But she never believed in forgiveness. Claire's expression didn't change. She simply folded her hands in her lap and waited for the verdict. The trial began on a sweltering Monday morning in June. By 6:00 a.m., reporters were already lined up along the courthouse steps. Satellite trucks from local stations and national media flanked the perimeter. Maple Ridge had never seen this kind of attention. Not for a wedding, not for a town hall, not even for the tornado that flattened the middle school in '97. But now, it was the center of a murder trial involving a beloved pastor, his elegant wife, and an 18-year-old girl who had once sung Amazing Grace under the chapel's vaulted ceiling. The courtroom filled quickly. Locals in starched shirts, journalists with worn notepads, a few churchgoers clutching Bibles as if they could still believe this was all some tragic mistake. Hannah's mother, Jolene Lewis, sat in the front row. She wore black and didn't cry. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The state versus Daniel and Claire Whitmore was split into 2 trials, one for each defendant, but the evidence was shared. Testimonies crossed the courtroom like ghosts. Hannah's journal entries, Maya Carter's voice shaking on the stand, the audio recording that captured Claire's chilling voice in the final moments of Hannah's life. Assistant D, District Attorney Rachel Grant took the lead in prosecuting Claire. She didn't hold back. In her opening statement, she stood tall, looked the jury dead in the eyes, and said, "This is not the story of a jealous wife. This is the story of a woman who planned, participated in, and helped cover up the murder of a pregnant teenager, and then went home and made tea." There was silence. Not even Claire blinked. Her defense attorney, Charles Bennett, was polished but outmatched. He tried to argue diminished capacity, emotional trauma, claimed Claire had a psychotic break upon learning of the affair. But the jury didn't buy it. Not after hearing the voice memo, not after seeing the robe, not after Daniel himself testified, under oath, that she had orchestrated the entire thing. "She wrapped the belt around Hannah's neck," he repeated, "and I didn't stop her. I watched her die." Daniel's trial was quicker. His defense attorney pushed for a reduced sentence, citing his cooperation, remorse, and clean record. He was manipulated by his wife, the lawyer argued. Yes, he failed. Yes, he sinned, but he did not deliver the fatal blow. The courtroom buzzed at the word sinned. You could feel the breath shift. Old church ladies, Sunday school teens, altar boys, all trying to reconcile the man they once trusted with the man who stood in chains before them. Prosecutor Grant didn't let them forget. "He groomed a child," she said. "He seduced her, lied to her, got her pregnant, and when she became inconvenient, he let her die. Then he helped hide the evidence." She turned to the jury. "Don't let that suit fool you. He may have worn a collar, but what he preached wasn't salvation. It was control." The emotional breaking point came during Jolene Lewis's victim impact statement. She approached the stand, hands steady, voice like steel. "She was my baby, Jolie," Nee said. "You see pictures of her and think she was quiet, but she had fire in her. She wanted to write books. She wanted to be a mom. She would have made a good one." She stared straight at Daniel. "She loved you, and you broke her." Then she turned to Claire. "You could have stopped it. You could have called someone, but you hated her because she reminded you that your husband never really loved you." Claire flinched, the first time she showed emotion. "She's dead because both of you wanted to stay clean. But blood always shows, no matter how much you scrub." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, not even Maya. The verdicts came down 3 weeks later. Claire Whitmore, guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Daniel Whitmore, guilty of second-degree murder, accessory to murder, sentenced to 30 years with parole eligibility after 22. Claire showed no emotion when the verdict was read. Daniel wept. As they were led away in handcuffs, Claire looked back only once. Not at her husband, not at the jury, at Jolene. Their eyes locked. One mother mourning, the other unraveling. No words were spoken. but the hatred between them was palpable. After the trial, the town of Maple Ridge splintered. Grace Chapel was shut down permanently. The building was sold, the stained glass windows removed and auctioned off. The cross out front was taken down by protesters and thrown into the nearby creek, the same one where Hannah had died. Some congregants left town, others tried to start over, but no one ever really recovered. Pastor Whitmore's sermons were wiped from the church website, but clips resurfaced online, montages of his smiling face, his soft voice preaching about purity, intercut with news footage of his arrest, TikToks, YouTube essays, true crime podcasts. Everyone had an opinion. She was too young. He was too powerful. Claire was the real Mons, here. But the only voice that really mattered had been silenced. 1 month after the sentencing, Jolene Lewis did something no one expected. She held a memorial service. Not at the church, at Black Hollow Creek, the very place her daughter had been found. Dozens came, students, teachers, neighbors. Maya stood beside her, holding Hannah's baby shoes, never worn. They lit candles, sang hymns. And when Jolene spoke, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about voice. Hannah wanted to tell her story, she said. She didn't get the chance, so we tell it now, every day, as loud as we can. Then she reached into a box and released a single white dove. It soared above the creek, over the broken trees, toward the open sky. And for just a moment, it felt like Hannah's voice had found a way to fly again. There are stories that fade over time, names that vanish from headlines, graves that grow over with weeds, forgotten except by a few. Hannah Lewis is not one of those stories. Even now, long after the courthouse lights dimmed, after the last gavel fell, and the media trucks rolled out of Maple Ridge, her voice still echoes. You hear it in whispered apologies from those who said nothing, in the silence left behind by a shuttered church, in the songs she never got to finish, the life she never got to live, and in a diary, stored in an evidence locker, filled with pages written in purple ink, one line underlined again and again. He promised forever. In the months after the trial, Maple Ridge tried to stitch itself back together, but the seams were too jagged. The new pastor who took over Grace Chapel's congregation, now relocated to a community center, began each sermon with a moment of silence, not for tradition, for Hannah. He called it the prayer without sound. There are sins, he said, that don't belong in the shadows anymore. A few former Cohen congregants returned. Most didn't. Parents became more protective. Rules for youth groups changed. Today, there is a plaque near Black Hollow Creek. It reads, "In memory of Hannah Lewis, daughter, friend, singer." She was silenced, but her truth speaks louder. People leave notes there, flowers, origami cranes. And when the wind is just right, you can hear the creek running gently over the rocks, like a whisper, like a song just beginning. Because some stories never end, and some voices, once broken, rise.